Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome, everyone, to yet another Into Games event here on the YouTubes. I can see lots of you doing lovely little waves in the chat. Thanks for doing that. Please do say hi and just check in and just tell me whether there is a horrible audio fault, whether something visually on the screen is not meant to be there, and you're like, Jonas, get that thing away from the screen right now, so that we can make sure that the event goes ahead smoothly. Even more waves in chat, so I'm going to take that as a sort of a positive recognition of audio working. Thanks very much, everyone. Hey, and how are you all doing? I'm Jonas, community manager for Intergames, and today we're organising an event for IG50. So a lot of you who are already here at the event, especially in the first few minutes, you'll already know what IG50 is. So, apologies if I'm sort of preaching to the choir here, but there are going to be many who potentially watch this resource later on, as the live stream will be available to watch later on. So hello to you in the future. Crazy how time travel works like that. And so just talk a little bit about what IG50 is. IG50 is an initiative by Into Games, which is designed to sort of we want to basically, we know that there's loads of people in the UK that are trying to get their first job in the games industry. We know there are loads of people that are so ready for that first job, but it is so hard to get past that first barrier of applications, of recruitment, and sort of getting yourself seen by the people that want you in their space. It's really hard to kind of to bring that pairing together. So what we try and do is every single year we run IG50, and this is an opportunity for 50 individuals in the UK games industry to basically sort of be given a bit of a platform, an uplift, a bit of a spotlight, where we will give them career support. We will help them sort of polish their CVs and cover letters and portfolios. We'll get them in front of real recruiters in the games industry. More on that later. And we will basically just do our best to try and help them climb that really, really incredibly high wall that is the UK games industry sort of entry level opportunities. So if you are someone that you are looking to get into the games industry and you feel that you're ready for it as well, like we really want to just push that if you've only started thinking about the games industry very recently, there's probably so much more that our community can do for you before IG50 is like the thing that you should apply for. But if you've been at this for a while and you've got that portfolio of work and you just need that little bit more help, IG50 is 100% the next thing on your docket. So please do check out IG50. There's going to be a link in the YouTube video below me, or you can go into Intergames50.uk. Head to that website to find out more. What we're going to be doing in today's event is sort of as part of the IG50 event and offerings that we're doing. We thought we'd basically just take a lot of the career advice that we know is useful, that we know that people need to hear, and that we're definitely going to be sort of putting into application and doing more hands-on with our IG50 winners. And actually, let's talk about that, and let's actually present one of those recruiters that I alluded to earlier to you, to our community, and basically just have them say it themselves, right? So we're sort of from launching on from that very, very cleanly and without sort of any messiness there, I'm going to introduce to the stage Rosey. So hi, Rosey.
Hi. Hello,
Hi.
everybody.
Rosey, I just did a very clean job there of sort of explaining what's about to happen next, as I'm sure you saw. So Rosey, what I'd like you to do is, could you just firstly just tell people sort of who you are, what's your relationship to the games industry, what's your role in the games industry, alluded to by the lovely little headline below our faces. Yeah, go for it.
Sure. So yeah, I'm Rosey. I am a senior recruiter currently at Playground Games. I've been in recruitment in the games industry now for just about 5 years. I think it was 5 years in March. And pretty much the entirety of that time, I've had a focus on early careers and helping people get that first role in the industry. And that's a really big part of my job here at Playground. So I do a lot of careers advice, visits to universities and schools, and a lot of working with graduates, students who are looking to get into the games industry.
Brilliant stuff. And so to sort of really launch on from that, you and I are here to really dig into sort of how we can support people in that that early recruitment stage, that getting their first opportunity in the games industry. But I believe you've actually brought something with you today that's going to do that's really going to speak to that subject a lot better than I could possibly. So with that, sort of without further ado, really, I'm going to give you just the entire platform yourself to just take it away. Everyone, please enjoy what Rosey has to say, and I shall be back just a little bit later.
Perfect, thank you. Hopefully everybody can see that all right and can still hear me and everything. So yes, as I said, my name is Rosey Asquith and I'm the senior recruiter at Playground Games. I've put my full name up on the screen as well as my email address. So we will have time for kind of questions at the end of the session today, but if you don't feel comfortable popping them in the chat or you think of a question afterwards, feel free to send me a connection request on LinkedIn or even drop me an email and I can try and answer you more one-on-one and help out with that. So before I kind of get started with the career advice, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about Playground Games specifically. So we were founded back in 2010, and in the 14 years since then, we have created 5 critically acclaimed award-winning hits, which is the Forza Horizon series, the most recent being Forza Horizon 5. For that series, we've won loads of awards. We've won over 100 Best of Awards, we've won BAFTAs and all sorts of exciting things like that. And we also, within the past few years, have started a new project in a completely different genre, which is Fable. And we were also acquired, I think, in 2018 by Microsoft to become an Xbox game studio, which has led to lots of exciting opportunities for us. So a little bit of information about the UK games industry as a whole before I kind of break down some of the tips and advice that we've got for you today. So the most important thing to know about the games industry in the UK is it is absolutely massive. So the global game audience is somewhere around 3.2 billion and approximately 36 million of those people are based in the UK. With the leading video game market in Europe and the 6th largest gaming market worldwide. And this might have changed a little bit now, but the UK is home to around 23 of the world's top 100 development studios. The UK games industry employs around 50,000 workers at over 2,000 games companies. Where we're based down in Leamington Spa, it's a real hub for the industry. There's like 30 plus game studios all in our one small town, which is really amazing. Lots of exciting things going on in Leamington, lots of events and meetups. And it's a real hub, like I said, for games, which is really cool. The UK's video game market has come to be valued at over £5 billion, and that's projected to increase to around £7 billion British pounds by next year. All of that to say, it's a huge, growing and very, very exciting industry to be in. But that does, however, mean that it's very, very competitive, particularly when you're getting your first role. So hopefully I'll be able to help you stand out a little bit from that competition today. So like I said, you really do need to be able to stand out from the crowd. So we've put that competition into a little bit of context. I do think some of these numbers are a little bit out of date now, but they'll still give you a pretty good idea of what's going on in the UK at the moment. So there's about 416 games courses from 132 institutions in the UK. I had a quick look. We have a graduate engineer role open at the moment. So I had a quick look at our applications. And over the last 90 days, we've received more than 400 applications for that role. And from that pot of 400 people, we've hired 5. So it's very, very competitive. And there's lots and lots of graduates and other students and other people just starting their career in games that you're going to be up against when you start making those applications. So hopefully I'm going to give you some useful advice today to make yourself, like I say, stand out from that crowd of those 400 plus people that are all competing for the same few roles. So to give you some of that advice, we've reached out to some of our more recent early career hires within our studio and asked them to give us their own tips and advice so you can hear it from the people themselves that we've just hired into their first role. So we're going to start with Scott. He is one of our graduate engineers. We hired him on a student placement back in 2020 and then permanently onto the tools team in 2022. And his advice is all around your portfolio. So the most important part of your application is going to be your portfolio, and it should be really clear and easy to navigate with good information on each project. So that's one of the most important things, is making sure the technical details are really clear. Hopefully you can see on Scott's, but each project has got, for example, the engine and the programming language at the very, very top. And that makes it really easy for recruitment and hiring managers to see at a quick glance if you've got the skills necessary for the role. Next, we've got Thomas, who is one of our technical writers, and his advice is all around networking. So although I've just gone through all those massive numbers about how big the industry is, once you're in, it's actually surprisingly small and everybody kind of knows everybody. So it's always really useful to build your network up when you are ready to make applications. Networking in person obviously can be quite scary, but it does get easier with practice. As Thomas said, get a load of business cards and get your website ready for when you do go out and network. But it also doesn't have to be in person. Like today, for example, there's lots of online virtual events, and that's kind of grown more and more over the past few years. But even outside of that, just make sure that your LinkedIn is fully up to date and complete with keywords, to make sure recruiters are able to search for you more easily. And also feel free to use LinkedIn as a networking site. So send connection requests out to people that you're interested in. Don't just spam them out at random, and make sure you add a note explaining why you want to connect with someone. So are you interested in their work? Are you wanting to join the studio that they work at? Something like that. And then once you've got those connections in, you can start interacting with them. So liking their posts, commenting, reaching out. Again, don't go crazy. Don't start spamming people, but make sure people recognize your name and see you as a bit of a voice within your industry. And next we've got Anjali, who we hired in 2022 as a design assistant on Forza. And her advice is all on specialization. So if you want to come and work at a AAA studio, like Playground Games, specialization is really, really important. So for example, our environment art team is split down quite far into things like terrain, foliage, geology. So you need to have an idea of where you want to end up. This is particularly if you want to work in AAA, like I say. It's slightly different at indie and smaller studios, but at a big studio, that specialization is really, really important. However, as Anjali says, that doesn't mean that you can then ignore every other discipline. It's important to be able to work in a team. So that means knowing what other developers are doing and how your work intersects with theirs. So take advantage of your time at university or at school and before you get into the industry, to work in teams and do group projects and game jams and things like that. And you can also join Discords and online groups to build that network out and also learn a little bit more about the wider industry. So I'm going to quickly run through the application process for you next. So this is kind of the bare bones of the application process that's specific to Playground Games. Obviously, this is going to differ studio to studio, but it also does change between our different roles. But this is just kind of the basis. I think it's useful when you're applying for your first roles to get kind of an idea of what that process is going to look like, even though, like I say, this isn't going to be the same for even every role within our studio. So first of all, you obviously submit your application. So that CV, portfolio, cover letter, if you've got one. Like I said, your portfolio is the most important of those three. And although a cover letter can be useful, please don't stress about them. They're kind of in addition to the rest of your application. Once you've submitted your application, it's reviewed first by a recruitment team. If you're applying for an entry-level role, chances are it'll be myself that has that first look. And then I send that through to our hiring manager to review. If they're happy to go ahead, we start with a 15-minute phone call with recruitment to just cover the basics and answer any initial questions that you might have. This is nothing too in-depth or scary. It's just a very quick first chat. Obviously, either after that application review or after that screening call, it can be, unfortunately, a no. We will let you know as soon as possible as we can on that if it is a no. And if we have any feedback for you at that stage, we will, of course, give that to you. However, if it's a yes, after you've had that screening call, you will go through generally to a Teams interview. These are usually about 45 minutes with a senior or a lead on the team that you're due to join. They will go through your CV and your portfolio and your experiences, and they might have a couple of technical questions on the day as well. Again, at that point, it can be a no. If it is a no after an interview, we will try very, very hard to get some feedback across to you. And always feel free to ask for more. There might not be any available, but if there is, we will make sure that you get that. If it's a yes, sometimes at this point, particularly for an entry-level role, there'll be a code test, an art test, or a design test. These will differ dependent on which role you're applying for. It might be a take-home test where you get a couple of weeks to complete it, or we do sometimes do online code tests, which are, again, held over Teams. If that all goes well, we then go through to, we still call it a studio interview, but actually a lot of these are also held over Teams if you're unable to travel for any reason. These are usually a couple of hours, and it's a chance to meet more of the team that you'll be working alongside, not just the senior or the lead. Again, there may well be technical questions or a test as part of this, but it's also just a chance for you to meet who you'll be working with. Again, unfortunately, at this point, it may well be a no, but if you get all the way through that process and you're unsuccessful, we will try very hard to get you some good feedback across so that you're still able to kind of go ahead and continue making further applications. However, hopefully it will be a yes, which will then be followed up with an offer, and then we'll work to get you onboarded and into the studio. Like I said, that is our process, and it does differ from studio to studio and from role to role, but generally speaking, that is what the process will look like for most entry-level roles. So what do we actually look for in an application? So in a nutshell, it is passion, preparation, and skill. And these three things are shown in your CV, your portfolio, and in an interview. So for CV, what do we look for? So obviously it's essential to any application that you're making, but we do suggest tailoring it at the very least to the games industry and ideally to the studio that you are applying for. Number one thing is correct details. So you need to make this as easy as possible, not just for recruitment, but also for the hiring managers and interviewers who are going to be reviewing your application. As you've seen, we get hundreds and hundreds of applications, so we unfortunately just don't have time to chase everybody on this. So always make sure to check that your portfolio links and that your contact details are correct before sending out your CV. And keep it relevant. So although you're absolutely welcome to include things like part-time jobs from a few years ago, you don't need pages and pages of information on this. Include any information relevant to the role. So if you've got a degree or education that's relevant, technical skills, any relevant work experience that you do have. If you do want to include a part-time job, you can obviously keep that in there, but again, make it relevant. So what transferable soft skills did you use in that role, and how is it relevant to the job that you are applying for? And relating to that, keep it concise. So for any application, we say 2 pages maximum, and for a graduate, you really shouldn't even need that much. So always make sure that you're keeping it nice and brief and clear and easy to read. And your portfolio. So this is what separates your application from everybody else. As we've seen, there are hundreds and hundreds of games courses across the UK, and everybody coming out of those courses are going to have a pretty similar skill set and maybe even similar projects. So your CV is going to look pretty similar, and your portfolio is going to be the bit that makes the difference. The number one tip here is quality over quantity. You're only as good as your worst piece, and you cannot control which project a hiring manager or a recruiter is going to click on. And you don't want that to be your worst piece. So if you're not 100% convinced about a project, just take it off the portfolio, or even just put it in a separate album that includes your older work. You want everything included on your portfolio to be at your highest level of work. What I usually say is try and curate it. So every time you add a project, if there's something on there that's a little bit older and maybe doesn't match that same level of quality, take the older project off. It should always be showing your very, very best work. Like I said, some people aren't keen on removing things from their portfolio. And if that's the case, like I said, just put it in an older album so that you can then direct and control which projects are being reviewed. And also make sure you can talk about your portfolio in quite a lot of detail. You will be asked about it, so you need to make sure you know your portfolio inside and out. As I said earlier, include technical details. So make sure you list anything like programming languages, engines, the software that you've used, everything like that. A bullet point list at the top of each project is the perfect way to do that, because it means we can skim through your projects and pick out the ones that use the technical details we're looking for to then read in a little bit more information. Any group projects that you include on there are obviously really useful to see, but make sure you really highlight what you specifically did, the software that you used, and how you used it. We really want to know what you personally can achieve. And tailor your portfolio if you can to reflect the studio that you're applying to. So if you're an artist, you can play our games and see the kind of work that we will be looking for. But you can also have a look at the job descriptions on our websites and see the hard technical skills that we're looking for, what tools we use, and make sure you're showing that in your portfolio. Obviously, at an entry level, tailoring all your applications to a lot of different studios is hard. I'm expecting you'll be making quite a lot of applications at this stage. So again, this is where if you're unclear on the kind of work you want to be doing, this is where albums can come in handy. So if you're an artist and you're using ArtStation, for example, you could have one realism portfolio album, and one stylized, and just send out the specific album that you want the studio to review. And the interview. So this is where you can prove to us why you should come and join our team. So obviously, number one here is clear communication. I appreciate that that can be quite tricky when you are nervous, but try to remember that an interview is just as much about you finding out about us as it is the other way around. Read over your CV and portfolio the day before to make sure you are ready to talk about both efficiently. And communication skills are really, really important when you start the job. So you do need to be able to show your skills in the interview. Even if you are really nervous, communicate that with us. Say, I'm really sorry, I'm feeling quite nervous. Take a break, have a sip of water. If you stumble over your words, I've done this whole talk, I just did it then. It's absolutely fine. We're expecting you to be nervous. So just communicate that with us, and that's showing those skills in action. Undertake research. So read up on the studio, the games that we make, if we've been in the news recently, any awards we've won, anything like that. We also tell you in advance who you'll be speaking with, so you can look them up on LinkedIn and see what they do within our studio. Play our games if you can as well, and be able to talk about your passion within your field. So give examples of a game you liked recently where you really liked the art style, for example, or a design mechanic you really enjoyed, or what first inspired you to join the industry. We really, really want to see your passion. We're very lucky in this industry that our research for job interviews is playing video games. So I've given you an excuse there to go and play more games. So use it and make sure you are doing that research. And revise. So your interview is obviously very likely to get technical. So be ready for this so that you're not totally put on the spot. If you don't know an answer straight away, it's not a problem. Work through it out loud so we can see how you work and see how you kind of reach the final answer. And if you do get it wrong, don't panic. You can always ask, what is the right answer? Can you talk me through what the right way to have done this would have been, so that we can at least see how you handle that situation? And even if you end up then being unsuccessful with us, you found out the answer, you found out how to answer those questions going forwards. So dealing with rejection, that's kind of been a little bit of a theme, I suppose, in this talk, is that it's very, very competitive and everyone is going to face application rejections. It's just an unfortunate fact of the games industry. Like I said, there's a lot of people applying for very few roles. So this is something that you're going to have to learn to deal with. The number one tip is don't take it personally. Like I said, it is very, very competitive, and it is very unlikely to be because of something you have done as a person. There are just maybe better candidates out there for the role. And like I said, hopefully you will receive feedback after an interview, but if not, please do ask. Like I said, if it's an early stage, we might not have that much feedback for you, but if you've had an interview, we should be able to give you something. So please do ask for that feedback, and then try to use that feedback going forwards. And treat every unsuccessful interview as practice. They're all just an opportunity to improve, and then use any feedback you do get as a way to find any areas of weakness for then you to go away and develop in personal projects or game jams or something like that. And just keep on trying. It is absolutely worth it when you do finally get that successful interview. So a few pro tips for you. Number one, save your CV as a PDF or a Word document and not an image file. Pretty much every studio use what we call an ATS, an applicant tracking system, and image files just do not work with that. So something like a PDF or a Word document, works much better with those ATSs, and means that we're going to be much more easily able to review your CV. Ensure that your contact details and portfolio link are correct and hyperlinked. If not hyperlinked, at least make it easy to copy and paste. Because of the amount of applications that we get, we don't have a huge amount of time to review each in detail. And that goes for hiring managers as well, not just recruitment. So if we're having to spend time typing out your portfolio link, for example, that eats up the time that we then have to actually review the work that you're wanting us to see. Like I said, your website is more important than your CV. So the CV can be super basic. It can just literally be a blank page with the information on it. It doesn't need to be really beautiful or formatted in a particularly exciting way. Just make sure it's relevant and accurate. And when you're preparing your applications, spend more time on your website and portfolio. And research. So one quite good tip is to research people who work at the studio at your level. Who have we hired recently into an entry-level role, and what experiences and skills did they have when we hired them? What work did they have on their portfolio? That gives you a really good benchmark of what you should be aiming for in order to come and join the team at Playground. And if you can't play the studio's latest title, at least watch a playthrough online. We do appreciate not everyone's got an Xbox, not everyone has access to Game Pass, for example. Try and at least watch. So for us, it'd be Forza Horizon 5, and just get an idea of the work that we do. And then you're able to talk about it, because you will be asked what you thought of our games and kind of why you want to come and join our studio. And this one's based on a question we get quite a lot from kind of entry-level applicants, is what to wear to an interview. Obviously, it's slightly less relevant now that less interviews are held on site and more are over Teams, but it's a very smart kind of casual vibe within a studio. So don't wear a suit or you'll feel really out of place, but also don't wear, shorts and flip-flops. Make sure you're clean and ironed, and then you'll be absolutely fine. So just quickly, a little bit of information about working at Playground. I've got some pictures on here as well. So working in the games industry in any capacity is really, really fun. At Playground specifically, we celebrate pretty much everything from National Gaming Day to Croissant Day. I think there is a perfect timing. There's a picture of croissants. And we do lots of social and charity events that you can get involved with. So things like Wolf Run, Shoebox Appeal. We also have Christmas parties, summer parties, Pub Thursdays every month as well. And we have smaller social events that are run by individual groups. So we have like groups and teams for pretty much every interest or hobby out there. So Dungeons and Dragons, we have a football team, we have groups for music fans, car fans, everything like that. And they all have their own social events and social calendars. And if you join the team at Playground and there's an interest that you have in common with somebody else, you can always start your own new group and kind of start that off going for yourself as well. I think there's a picture in there of the really cool merch that we get, which is obviously also a really good bonus. We also have some groups that we have set up to support diversity. So Women of Xbox and Women at PG, Pride at PG, POC at PG, and we've recently launched Mind at PG as well. And they all have their own social calendars to support their missions too. So lots and lots of things going on within our studio, which are all really fun and exciting. So a couple of final takeaways, and then we can open the floor up to any questions that anybody might have. So as I've said, studios receive huge numbers of applications, and you really do need to make yours stand out. Do lots of research. So part of that is into the studio. Why do you want to come and work for us? But also playing the games that we've released, but also a variety of games on different platforms. Like I said, it's having that knowledge of the industry. What are other studios doing? What are other artists or designers or programmers doing that you're interested in? And being able to talk about that industry on a wider level is really important. And my final takeaway is just be resilient. Hopefully I've shown you that getting into the industry is absolutely worth it, even though you will be facing, like I've said, probably quite a few rejections. It is absolutely worth it to keep trying, keep improving on those skills. And hopefully you will be able to come and join us, whether at Playground or just in the industry on a larger scale. And that is pretty much everything for the talk. So Jonas, if you want to jump back in and we can do some questions.
Absolutely. Cool. Thank you for all that, Rosie. Really enlightening stuff. Really love those photos as well. There's one photo that you showed that like had this arch of orange balloons over a door. And I just instantly had the immediate desire to be like, do I know that building? Do I know that building? I don't know why. It's something so recognizable about the windows. I won't ask you to pull that photo out now.
No, I don't even know if I'll be able to. So.
But yeah, no, really lovely collection of slides, information, and resources there. And yeah, thank you, audience, for participating, taking a watch, and I see that there are some questions coming in chat already. So basically, I think let's just start pulling from some of those questions now. If you've got a question, please do put it into the YouTube comments, and I will do my best to get to everyone. I can bring the comment up on screen thanks to the power of technology. So the first question, and I'm actually going to expand on this question a little bit because I know that it's going to be asked in a lot of different ways. So Dan Tonkin asked, like, what's a good example of a portfolio for a game writer? What's the best you've ever seen? But I'd also like to expand the question because there are disciplines that are just non-visual, right? Whether it's coding, there's QA, there's I'm really interested in production, project management and these sorts of things. And it's less obvious, right? What fulfills, what replaces a portfolio in like a less visual discipline. So if you could just talk a little bit about how does one expand on that, and in maybe in games writing, but in anything else as well, like what are some really good examples you've seen for any given discipline?
Yeah, of course. So obviously QA and production, it's going to be really, really hard to have like a physical portfolio because what you're going to show on there. What I would suggest for those is any examples you've got where you've worked on a project or a game jam or done an internship or something in that kind of position. Production, for example, what obstacles did you face? What challenges? What differences did you make to the processes that the group was following? Just kind of examples of how you took on that role specifically to a project, and kind of, like I said, what issues came up with that project in particular, and how that might differ on, for example, if you came and joined Forza, how is it going to be different in that capacity? And similar with QA, it's going to be all about the experience that you've got. And if it's a first-time role, then maybe make sure you're working in that capacity on a university project or something like that, and explain how you've got those experiences. And then game writing. So obviously any writing samples that you've got would be great. You can obviously show those on a website if you want to, or you can send them across in a document. We'll obviously be asking for those if you're applying for a writing role. With writing as well, though, chances are if it's an entry-level role, there'll be some sort of test, so you can use that to show your skills if you don't have any work that you're able to share for any reason. But it is difficult, and this is kind of where that tip of looking at other people that have been hired in kind of an entry-level capacity, go and have a look at what they've done, and how they've kind of tackled that problem. But yeah, for the non-visual ones, that's when the emphasis is going to be more on your CV and how you're communicating the skills and experiences that you've got that are relevant to that role.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks for expanding on that. You mentioned, I suppose, Dan Tonkin, you've asked another question, and I think I already know the answer to it, but I will read it out because, we don't want to assume that it's obvious. But you mentioned with PDFs, with CVs, cover letters, right? I suppose actually I can already see how we can expand on the question. So from a formatting, I think the question is very much from a formatting position. Is it okay to have images on there? Dan wants to use some visuals for relevant work, etc. But I suppose I suspect I already know what the answer is for formatting and technical stuff, but it'd actually be really interesting to hear, how do you feel about CVs that sometimes break the mold, whether they actually, rather than just being blocks of text that say about me, relevant history, relevant work, and skills. What about when people do break the mold and maybe present their CV in slightly more kind of formatted, maybe more narrative, maybe more of a sort of a visual piece? Does that still work? Does it still work for the team and work for hiring managers?
It's very, very subjective if you're going to do kind of the more visual CV. The most important thing is make sure we can still find the information. I've seen some CVs that are absolutely beautiful, they're amazing, but it's impossible to actually find what I'm looking for on there. It's kind of hidden in everything, and it's kind of, the message is lost. So if you are going to make it visual, just make sure, give it to, like, I don't know, your mum or someone who knows nothing about games industry, and say to them, can you pick out this? There's the job description. Can you look at my CV and make it make sense? And if not, then we're not going to be able to either, probably, if it gets lost in that message. And it comes back to the piece of the time restraints as well, because there are so many applications that we get. That first review, particularly from the hiring manager, you're probably going to get a few minutes. So they don't want to be having to dig through loads and loads of visual stuff to find, I don't know, can you code in C++? They need to be able to see that. However, as Dan said, it is about standing out. So if you do want to do that, feel free to, just like I said, make sure it is easy to use and easy to navigate still. That's kind of going to be the most important thing. And like I said, that's where the portfolio is how you stand out. Dan mentioned obviously the visuals for some relevant work. So on portfolios, we like to see screenshots, or you could do a video on there as well, embed a video of the playthrough if it's a game project, and that's where you kind of show those visuals. So like I said, it's kind of subjective and it's hard to give advice without seeing what your idea is, Dan, I guess. But like I said, just make sure it's still easy to see and easy to use the CV.
Cool. Brilliant stuff. Thank you very much. I've got a question now here from a Mark. So sort of expanding on a point you made earlier where you're saying a portfolio, quality better than quantity. Mm-hmm. But I also imagine that there is a minimum, right? Like one image may not necessarily constitute a portfolio. So yeah, Mark sort of says, how many portfolio pieces can you recommend? Does 2 to 3 look good as long as the quality is very good? Yeah, Mark, thanks for the question.
Yeah, I mean, 2 to 3, as long as they are all of a high standard, is absolutely fine. It's interesting that you say 1 might not be enough. It depends on the size. If you've created something massive, then 1 is obviously going to be more than enough, especially at an entry-level role. But we would rather see, 3 to 4 really, really high quality pieces than 20 that are all kind of below the standard that we're looking for, or below the standard that you can work at. So yeah, there's not particularly a minimum. Again, it's one of those questions that's very subjective because it depends on the work that you are showing, and also what we're looking for. But yeah, it is very, very much quality over quantity.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks for answering. I'm just taking a look through the questions now because I want to make sure that we don't revisit a lot of the same themes. Double EE. Let's see, EE, interested in the VFX role that's open currently. The studio mentions hybrid. So how important is an applicant's location at that first, I suppose at your first stage, right, at the scanning stage? Because at interview, that's when a conversation can open up about, expectations of relocation.
Yeah, of course. At application stage, the location isn't going to be kind of judged at all because, like I said, that first step is going to be a screening call with recruitment, and that's where we'll go through things like the hybrid policy. If you're open to relocation, our hybrid policy is 3 days within the studio every week, so that tends to mean relocating to Leamington or at least close by, and we will cover that conversation off. So you're not going to be immediately written off at an application stage just because of location, because we can dig into that a little bit more when we kind of have that initial chat.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you. Next up, we've got Pheasantry. Pheasantry asks, what do you do? Let's say you've got an applicant who's really good for a studio's current portfolio, like, for example, a studio that's really good for making a Forza series. But then what if that studio pivots to a completely different genre? The genre may not even be announced. The project may not be announced, right? So you'll have loads of candidates who have kind of maybe geared themselves up for a studio's current kind of culture and maybe not be aware that there's going to be a shift in that. I suppose, what does that look like for you guys internally when you're hiring?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we first started hiring for the Fable project, it was obviously very heavily under NDA. So we just described it, I think, as an RPG was all we were able to say. So that would be on the job description. So you'd be able to see that it was that. In terms of preparing for it, which I think that question might be a little bit about, obviously, we've not already released a Fable project, so you can't go and play through or watch our old projects in that sense. What I would say is there are old Fable games, so go and watch those or play those, but then also still have a look at Forza, see what we're doing there, see, what the studio is capable of. I'm trying very hard not to say too much. There is still very much a big NDA in place, so still do that research and still kind of prepare for it. But if you apply, for example, for a role on Forza and we have a look at it and the team or the hiring manager think, well, there's a similar role over on the other project that they're a better fit for, we do refer you across. You're not kind of cut out if you've only applied for one. So I don't know if that answers the question, but still go back and kind of have a look at what we've worked on. And like I said, play through the old Fable series as well.
I've been just practicing my Richard Ayoade impression. That's all of my prep completely done.
Yeah, just watch the stream and repeat, you'll be fine.
Exactly. Next up, question from Loco. I'm a big fan of this question. Yeah, because it's about the software that's maybe used internally. We understand that there are absolutely going to be technologies, tools, softwares that are used for different stages of all sorts of things. And I think as applicants, we sometimes worry that our CV is just going to go through like a bot or like a program, and that's going to somehow like kick us down unless we know how to game the tool. So the question from Loco, you'd mentioned about software used for scanning CVs. Are there any techniques that we can apply when drafting a CV that would increase our chance of an interview? So I guess really, what is that software looking for? What's that software doing for you?
We don't use a software to scan for CVs. Our ATS just tracks it. So all that means is we can click on a job, see everyone who's applied for it and what stage they're at. And then that's what we use to view the application, the CV, the portfolio. All of the reviewing is done by a human on the recruitment team. No, there's no bots, there's no scanning. So nothing particularly that we would suggest using. I do know that other companies probably do have stuff scanning it for them. And in that case, I would just say, look at the job description and kind of use any keywords from that. But all of that is done by our wonderful recruitment team. So there's a human sat behind it reviewing those for you. So not really anything in particular that you need to deal with in terms of software.
Brilliant stuff. Let's see, next question. I'm just seeing what's on the docket because there's a lot of words to read. I think this is a good question here, actually. Anna Vonti. Hi, Rosie. Thank you for the talk. How do you consider a CV that doesn't seem to have relevant experience? Is a game jam, for example, something that could be added to a CV? I guess really the question there is like, if a person knows that they're sort of coming from the wrong background, what could they be adding? What could they be doing and adding to the CV that might be relevant, that might not be obvious?
Yeah, absolutely. So game jams are great for that if you are kind of switching careers or you don't have that educational background in games or something like that. Absolutely, game jams are a great place to go and build those skills. You can also do things like online courses in particular software skills or technical skills, so they can be really helpful as well. At an entry level, we are just looking for that technical skill set, really. So as long as you can show it in some way, whether that's personal projects or game jams, like you said, then that's absolutely great. Our entry level roles are entry level. We're not expecting you to have 2 to 3 years of experience or anything like that. It is a proper way into the industry. It is an entry level role. So
nice. No, happy to hear it. We all make too many jokes about, entry level role in the industry must have 5 years experience in a platform that hasn't existed for more than 6 months. Sonyo has asked a wonderful question here, which is, so I've been job searching for a few months, doing my best to stay resilient and working on projects. I want to post them about on LinkedIn, but I worry that posting works in progress looks bad. Is that true? Working.
There's kind of 2 sides to it. So like I said, with the portfolio, you can't control what someone's going to click on first. And if that's a work in progress and you've not made it clear that it's a work in progress, then someone might think that's your final piece. And then that's obviously the standard you're going to be kind of judged for. However, if you make it really clear, or you have a separate album where you're sharing things and you say, these are my works in progress, so we know. Some people love doing that, and some hiring managers love seeing that, to see kind of how you follow that progress and what process you use. So they can be really helpful. If you're posting them on LinkedIn, obviously it's the same. Just put in the post, this is a work in progress. I still have these things to do. This is kind of what my end goal is. These are the obstacles I've overcome so far, something like that. Just make it clear that you're not posting it as a final piece, I think, and then it's absolutely fine.
Brilliant stuff. Nathan Donnelly asked a really great question here, which is just, does a portfolio need to be a website? Could it be a YouTube channel or even a playlist or a Twitter page, anything like that?
Generally speaking, website's going to be the best chance, really, the best way of doing it, just because of that navigation piece. If you're sending us a YouTube channel, we don't know what we're looking for. We don't know what videos we should be watching. You can always have a website and then link to specific videos, for example, on your YouTube page, and then use it like that. But the best kind of thing is to have a kind of landing page, have a website that you can send to us. It's just kind of the easiest way for us and for hiring managers to navigate and to see that work.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. I'm just reading through now because we've got lovely some people sort of revisiting questions and themes that I think we've actually talked about. Let's do this one. Joyce Mack asked a really great question. For those of us already in the industry who want to transition into another department, maybe you're in marketing, you want to go into narration or UI UX, how do you make that leap from one department from another? Assuming that you don't already necessarily have the right skills, what can you do, or what can you sort of communicate to say that that's something you'd like to do?
Something that's quite useful if the studio that you're already in is kind of open to it is have a chat with your line manager, with your team, say I kind of want to get involved in something else, and they can open up those channels of communication for you to talk to the other teams and kind of learn what they're doing. If they can lend you out one day a week or something to go and work and build on that, and then you can make the move internally. We absolutely welcome kind of internal moves where we can support that. That's something that we appreciate and enjoy doing quite a lot. But generally, it is going to be building up those skills. So, like I said, online courses, things like that, joining kind of groups and networks where you can chat a little bit more. There's like Discords and chats for basically every discipline out there. So go and join those and have a chat and get advice and feedback from people that are currently doing that role on how you can develop your own skill set. And then, just look for any training that you can do and kind of discuss it internally and see if it is something that your studio can support.
Nice. I've got another question here for you, relevant to, this is maybe more relevant to sort of a hiring manager in programming and sort of software tech. So by all means, if it's not the sort of thing if it's not your ballpark, then you can just say it's not my ballpark. But there's a question here about sort of how important is like engine familiarity. So I suppose what that question is like the games industry has lots of different tools and platforms. And, what if the applicant has maybe the skills, but hasn't actually used the relevant platform before? So in this case, Double E says, for my example, my most recent professional experience is in Unity. I'm also proficient in Unreal, but some studios use in-house engines.
Yeah, so we have an in-house engine to answer that question straight away there. So we wouldn't expect you to have experience with it because it wouldn't be possible for you to. But having in-engine experience generally is really, really helpful. So even if it is Unreal or Unity, being able to show that is really helpful just to kind of show you've worked in an engine. And obviously, if you can expand that and work on a few different engines, chances are you'll be able to jump into Wild and learn it quite quickly. But we're never going to throw you in and just expect you to be an expert because it's not possible. So you'll get a lot of onboarding and a lot of information on how our engine works. And I would assume that's the same, going to be the same in studios where maybe they use Unreal and you've used Unity. They would hopefully give you that information before you get started. But try and expand it. If you can learn a little bit more of Unreal, maybe again, do a course or practice or do a bit of just like self-teaching with it, then that will obviously really help you with that. Similarly with software, so for our artists, it's less about whatever specific software you've used and more about the kind of baseline artistic skills. You can learn a software package as long as you've got kind of the technical skills and the background skills to back it up. It's absolutely fine.
Nice. I've got a question that really speaks to my heart here, and so lovely to get your take on it. And you mentioned this in particular when you were talking about some of the playground groups that have been organised. Would you consider Dungeons and Dragons game mastering good experience for a games designer? I suppose we're like more openly as well. Have you seen applicants perhaps using something like that, like a hobbyist game, or like Dungeons and Dragons, like TTRPGs, as sort of a relevant experience? And have you, has it worked? Do you think people actually do have the relevant soft skills, or does it require them to maybe talk it up a bit more and sort of say why it's relevant?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen it, but I would say it's kind of in addition to more traditional games sort of projects, and it would probably require quite a lot of talking up if that was all the experience that you had. But it's something that's good to have on there as long as you can talk around why it's relevant. And like you said, then Jonas, it's the soft skills that would come into play with that as well quite a lot. But like I said, that would kind of need to be in addition to something a bit more technical, a bit more hands-on with actual games design.
Brilliant stuff. Dan Tonkins back with another question. Fan of 60-second video introduction sent alongside a CV, cover letter, or portfolio?
That's a very interesting one. I don't know that I've ever seen one personally. So I suppose it would be a way to stand out. But generally, it's going to be the same information that's in the CV and the cover letter. So we're probably still going to do a lot of it based on that. I also don't really know how you would send that across unless you linked to it on the CV or on your portfolio. But yeah, that's not something I've seen before, so I don't know how well that one would go down. Maybe you can be the one that tries it for us, Dan.
Yeah, and I imagine that there's an element there, isn't it, where if you had 400 applicants to one of those roles recently, that's potentially
Yeah.
400 minutes of introductions to
Yeah.
watch. So I think there's something to be said for that. That could potentially be quite demanding on a recruiter. Let's see. I'm just catching up. By the way, thanks everyone who's sort of like kind of engaging in conversation as well around lots of these questions, or after your question is asked, there's lots of people just saying thank you, Rosie, for answering the question, which is just absolutely lovely. And thanks everyone in chat for being so positive. Tom, thank you for the talk. It's super insightful. When you get to the interview stage, what advice can you give to be able to smash it?
Good question. So, like I said, practice is really, really important. So, if you've got a friend or somebody who can practice with you, and by that I just mean go through really generic interview questions. It doesn't need to be anything technical or generally related to the role. Just talking through your CV and portfolio, just to kind of get into the habit of talking about it in that way to kind of explain things and answer those sort of questions. That's really helpful. And also, if you've got kind of some answers ready, it makes you feel a little bit more confident. And then, like I said, it is just the communication piece. So taking a deep breath, getting yourself ready, making sure there's no distractions. My dogs, for example, are all locked up downstairs so that they don't come up here today. So making sure stuff like that in the background is sorted. And yeah, just communicating, be ready to ask questions back, have that sort of stuff prepared. And revision is always helpful. So, like I said, quite a lot research into the studio, into who you're going to be speaking to. When you have that first screening call with a recruiter as well, you can ask, what should I expect? Is there anything I can prepare in advance? And if we can help you with that, we will do. But yeah, practice is kind of the main advice I can give for interviews.
And here I was like hiring my friend's dogs to charge into the room at when I'm paused or stuck on a question. I'll use the dog as a tactical deferring method, and it'll make them feel so much warmer to me because I've got a cute cuddly dog.
Yeah, that works. It's my dog that woofs that I'm like, maybe you can keep quiet today, Patrick, while I'm a little bit busy.
Nice. I do joke only slightly, but only slightly. There's a really great question here from Mark Buhay, which is about the sort of referrals in within an organization. So is referral for an employee inside the company, what does that do to an application? Does it boost it somehow? Do they get a big shiny star on them that says totally hire this person? Does it change something about the application, or actually does it maybe just kind of get treated the same way from a certain point, right? Because obviously they won't ever apply through the public channel, but at a certain point they still have to be interviewed, I assume.
Yeah, so in a lot of ways, it's still going to be the same, whether you've got a referral or not. We're still hiring for the same role. We're still going to have to kind of base it on the same skill set. But it does definitely help if someone that we know works well and kind of fits into the company and is really good at their job has said, I used to work with this person, or I know this person and I think they'd be a real asset, then that is going to give you, like I said, a bit of a gold star, and we are going to consider that application maybe in a slightly more positive light initially, but it's always going to be with the same skill set, the same sort of checklist of do they have these things that we're looking for. But it does help, especially if we can then go and chat to the person that's referred you and say, why do you think they're a fit? Or do you know the answer to a couple of these questions or something like that? But generally speaking, it is still going to be the same.
Nice. I've seen some really good questions ahead that I know that I'm just going to hold on to as we're just approaching the last 5 minutes of the event, everyone, by the way. So just be aware that if I haven't got your question yet, we may just run out of time, and I'm so sorry for that. But please do be aware that we're both sort of members of Intergames, IG50. We've both got LinkedIn and things like that. And Intergames as a community is there to help people through this very stage of the games industry, to help people get through to their first role, giving people the resources to know, what should they be putting practice into, how can they be improving their portfolio. And just as our Discord is just super active, we've got over 8,000 members, and we're constantly answering answering questions from our community and sort of giving them resources and support. So if you haven't got a question answered here today, jump into the Intergames Discord and just, there'll be a channel there. It'll say Ask Intergames, which is where you can sort of talk to us as an organization. It'll say Ask an Ambassador, where you can get an industry professional who's sort of willing to give a little bit of time to answer questions and things like that. And there's also really great places to post your portfolio, get feedback and works in progress, etc., etc., etc. I just put all that out there. Yeah, I just put all that out there. So if you haven't got your question answered today, there's a space that you can go take that energy and still get some positive feedback. With that said, I think we're probably going to go for like 2 more questions. And one of them I just eyed up is, so I suppose, yeah, let's go for this. So this is from Sonio again. Thank you, Sonio. So Sonio, I understand how to use industry tools like Maya, but also know how to use tools like Nomad and Cozy Blanket. In the eyes of the recruiter, can seeing potentially an applicant with so much range between programs seem out of place? So I suppose that's maybe a good question as well about generalizing and specializing, which I know comes up a lot in a lot of different disciplines.
I wouldn't say out of place, particularly. Like I said in that screening call, we're going to ask you what you've used and what projects you've used it for. So that's where you can kind of cover that and maybe explain to us if there are any sort of discrepancies or anything like that. But like I said, as long as you've kind of got the skill set in place, the software that you use isn't necessarily going to be a barrier to that. You can learn it in the studio, or if it's compatible with what we're using, then you can continue to use that software anyway. But yeah, just chat through it with the recruiter. If they have any questions for you on that, we'll cover that off with you at the very first stage of the application process.
Brilliant. And then I've got a last question here, which I think is just quite an important question actually to ask. And I think it's really indicative of what the feeling is for a lot of applicants. Pixels Hattie says, how do you be resilient with frequent rejections and then continue sending applications? You know, this might be, you've already ensured that your CV portfolio, while already ensuring that CV portfolio and improving your own skills to increase the chances as much as possible. So sort of, you're already doing as much as you can.
Yeah, it is tricky, especially for kind of someone getting into the entry level. You've probably seen, if you're applying, there are not that many entry level roles at the moment. So I appreciate it is really hard, and it's difficult to give advice on how to kind of keep being resilient, other than just to take it for what it is. Try not to take it personally, and like I said in the talk, use that feedback going forwards. If there is somebody like Intergames or a mentorship that you can reach out to, then they will be able to give you a lot more kind of one-on-one, hands-on support on how to deal with that feedback and how to deal with those rejections. But it is a tricky question to answer, really, other than just the kind of be resilient and build that resilience up, and know that we all kind of struggle with, you know, imposter syndrome and everything like that. And chances are it's not something personal to you. It's just maybe you don't quite fit what we're looking for or what another studio is looking for. And as I said today, there is a lot of competition for those roles. So you just kind of have to keep trying. If you are desperate to get into the industry, you've just got to keep trying with it. And like I said, build that network, reach out to anybody for support that you might need or that might be able to offer you that support. And hopefully we can kind of give that to you and help you get that first role.
Nice. Thank you for going into that. And yeah, it's definitely it's a topic of the year and a theme. Good luck to, you know, if you are someone who's going through that sort of application marathon, you know, best of luck, absolutely, from the both of us. I hope that there's been something in today's talk that is going to make you go away and maybe initiate a little bit of change, whether it's, you know, changing something about the portfolio, changing something about the CV, or just thinking, right, next time I get invited to those interviews, I'm going to spend more time on this, that, or the other. There's, hopefully something for everyone to take away from today. Rosey, thank you so much. Thank you for bringing that talk to us. Thank you for taking the time to really just answer all of these lovely questions from our community, and just doing so with just so much of yourself and your experience and sort of your empathy as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you. It's been really, really great today. Thank you everyone for watching.
And to everyone watching, I talked about the Intergames community towards there at the end, but just a reminder as well, Intergames is running IG50. IG50 is something that you can apply for. It is for people who aren't working in the games industry yet. It's for people who are trying to look for their first role in the games industry. And when you apply for IG50, what we do is we then will basically have you judged by Intergames, by games professionals in the industry. And they'll find 50 individuals within our applications who say these people look like they're so ready for their first job there, and let's give them the help that they need. And so we take those 50 people and we sort of give them a platform, a spotlight. We become your biggest fans in cheerleading for you on the sidelines, but on the front lines as well, getting you in front of recruiting teams, getting you in front of potential sort of opportunities around the games industry that either you may not have known about before, but more importantly, they would not have known about you before. And then just really getting you out there in a way that will hopefully make some positive impact on that career search. That's as much as I think I'm going to say on the subject for now. If you do have any questions on IG50, if you have any questions on anything that you've heard today, jump into the Intergames Discord and just start chatting away. I'm there nearly 24/7. You'd think I'd never sleep. I'll do as much as I possibly can for you. Rosey, any final parting sweet words before we shut this stream down?
I don't think so, other than a little shout out for PG, which is we do have a graduate engineer role, student placement engineering role, and also environment art. We are looking for grads, so come and apply.
Yeah, no, thank you so much to Playground Games for allowing Rosey to lock the dogs up and hang out with us here. It's just been so exciting to speak with you and yeah, get all those insights. Thanks very much, everyone. I'm going to click an end stream button pretty much any second now, which means we're going to disappear from the YouTubes. Look after yourselves, have a great week, and see you in whatever digital form the internet allows for.